Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire View series. My name is Cherrise Boucher, and I'm a momentum strategy coach. The whole inspiration behind this series was to share stories. And sharing stories connects people and brings inspiration and motivation and a sense of community around that you're not alone in whatever it is that you're going through. And I can't even tell you how many times I go back and think about or watch interviews that I've done over the past almost 2 years, year and a half or so, and that these women's stories still inspire me and like kind of kick me in the ass when I'm not feeling it that day. So I hope that you find the same. And there are women with all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of specialties throughout this whole series. So you can just scroll right through my website at cherriseboucher.com under the Inspire View series and grab some that you like to watch. And they all have great offers for you too to get to know them better. So today, I'm going to introduce you to my new friend and co-author of our recent book, which is so exciting, and that's how we connected, Dana Croy. She is also known as Feng Shui Mama. Dana is a certified Feng Shui practitioner and Reiki Master teacher whose spiritual journey along her professional background has allowed her to create a heart-centered business. Having won and majorly lost the coveted Croy Family Mom of the Year award 14 years running, she knows balancing family and a business, not to mention a little spirituality and self-care, is not always easy. And I think we can all vouch for that. Dana's life has been filled with many teachers, wild women, and shaman who took her into their sacred circles. Through this lens, Dana offers sacred space clearing, decluttering services, and coaches other heart-centered business owners on their web and social media presence, as well as processes within their business. Which sound like two different things, but I know it's going to blend together.
Yes.
She teaches around Nashville and online, so super easy to connect with Dana. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you.
So share a little bit about how you got to here, and then we'll delve into how your two seemingly different things, because that's like me too, and we'll talk about that. Seem like two different pods kind of, and then blending them together. But first I'd like to know how you even got to do what you're doing now.
Gosh, I think for a lot of us, and I'm a storyteller, so I'm just going to warn you.
Okay.
Kind of reel me in, grab the hook. So I grew up in a home that had a lot of paranormal activity, and so I, from a young age, was able to sort of see through the veil that there were some other things in the world, right? Mm-hmm. And then as I got older and began my professional path, which was retail management, I, sort of had this spiritual lens on the side, a lot of spiritual classes and circles that I was part of. And then I had sort of my professional gig. And everything was very compartmentalized, which really didn't work for me. And then I met my husband and left my traditional job and began to manage a metaphysical bookstore here in Nashville.
Fun.
Yeah, this was in 1999, one of the oldest metaphysical bookstores in the country at the time. So I had a lot of really great experiences through that. I got married, had my son, and off and on, as I've been raising my children, I've gone back to work. So I've when the kids needed me at home, I've been at home, and then I've gone back to work. And that was a real luxury for me. And I continued to try to sort of pigeonhole myself back into my traditional professional gig. And it just continued to not work. And then eventually my path took me into fundraising and development, which I love. I have a real passion for. But again, nothing just entirely worked for me. I was successful at what I did, but there was just a hole missing for me. And I'm one of those people, and in the book I talk about this, people are constantly calling me, can I take you to coffee? Can I take you to lunch? I need your opinion. I need your expertise. And along the way, I had become a Reiki Master. I had done Feng Shui certification. I did those things really for myself more than anything. And so you know, my husband repeatedly kept saying, you've got to start charging people. You have to stop taking these phone calls and these emails, and, you know, this is not working. And I was just unhappy, quite frankly. And so finally, I did this thing. I went to my husband and I said, look, I'm going to pull the kids out of school for a year. I'm quitting my job. And he said, okay. He kind of, like, he'll go along with me for a little while. And I did. And so we took this year at home. My son was in 6th grade and my daughter was a second grader. And we just took a breath. We took a collective breath as a family, which we really needed. And it opened up a lot of doors. My husband, through that process, was able to find another job, which he had not had time to do because we were running around like crazy people. And I had some time to breathe with my kids, get to know them again, and see where I needed to go. And so that's what happened. And so I really only launched my actual business a year ago. It'll be a year on Halloween.
Nice.
And it was great. And so I sort of looked at, what is it that people call me for? What are these things that I'm constantly getting questions on, right? And how do I bring them together into a business?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so that's how it came together.
That is. Yes.
And so you do space clearings, but then you're also working like with businesses.
Yeah.
And you do them, like I mentioned in the intro, both locally and online. So can you do the energetic stuff remotely too?
Yes. And much like Reiki, you know, when you get into that 3rd degree, you get the long distance attunement, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've been doing space clearing for, I don't know, about 18 years locally. I did it a lot more when I was working at the metaphysical bookstore, and then I sort of pulled back because it really is, it takes a lot of time and energy to be able to do that. But then I've been studying with Denise Lynn.
Yeah, I love her.
Love Denise Lynn. What I decided to do this year was to actually go through her certification process. I was trained to do space clearing, like I said, years ago. I have a lot of tools under my belt, but I decided to step into her program. And I'm not a program junkie. I'm not going to lie. I'm not that person who's constantly seeking more certifications. I'm just not. And this was something I'd looked at for a long time and decided that I really wanted to do it. And so that was a component within her certification that I've been able to add to my tool belt, is the remote clearings.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, I saw her at the I Can Do It conference here in Orlando last year. I went to her workshop.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. She's great.
I love her.
Yeah. Yeah. Her story and everything is just inspiring too.
Yes.
So when you're working with people, how did you combine, I guess, I'm wondering how you combine these two things so it feels right, because it was a struggle for me.
Mm-hmm.
With my get shit done stuff, right? Which is very masculine and like, boom, boom, you know, we're doing this.
Right.
Then the other side, as a Reiki master also, and my energy work and my affirmation cards that I've created.
I love them. I love getting those every day on my Facebook.
Oh, good. I haven't done one today yet. I need to do that after this. But so that's the very feminine and softer side of me. And I struggled kind of combining those two, and what was that key, you know, that one thread that wove them together. And I finally found it, but it took longer. I mean, I guess it really wasn't that long. It happened within the past, I don't know, 6 months or so.
Okay.
And it's coming together more and more the more I talk about it, and I'm really blending them. But how did you find a way to combine those where they didn't feel like totally different things? Because a lot of people are multi-passionate and they struggle with this too. And I hear it a lot. You know, they've got this thing they like to do and this thing they like to do, and they just can't figure out how to make it not seem so disconnected.
Right. So I think the traditional thinking in business is you find your niche market. And I've seen that repeatedly.
Yeah. All the time. All
it's
over.
bullshit. I'm just going to call bullshit on it right now.
Okay.
And the reason why, and I think this is why when I've tried businesses in the past, like, I mean, I've tried a little bit of everything, right? I've tried doing Reiki. I've tried Reiki as a business, as a standalone business. No, it didn't work for me. It works for other people. It didn't work for me. I've tried Feng Shui as a standalone business. It did not work for me. And I think it's because it's kind of like being in traditional business. It's this pigeonholing effect that I think is really detrimental to our soul. One of my clients I met with recently, she's a amazingly talented violinist here in Nashville. She plays on the Grand Ole Opry. She's on sessions. I mean, you might pick up a country music disc and hear her violin on it, not even know.
Wow.
Her fiddle. But she makes candles. She makes these amazing soy wax candles, and they're beautifully scented. And so I met with her, and she said, I want to do both of these things, and everybody's telling me I should let this thing go, but this thing's actually, I love it. It's very creative, and I'm making a lot of money on it, right? The candles. And I said, do you have time to do it? And she said, yeah. And I'm like, do you love it? Yeah. I mean, it wasn't taking away from anything. Why did she need to give that up to be a successful fiddle player, right?
Right.
Some business person told her that because that's their model. They got an MBA somewhere, and this is what we're taught. So what happened with me, I got these things, these like two sort of dualistic things that people are always asking me about. Can you come and organize my home, right? We know you've got Feng Shui and you've got great organizational skills. And I'm that person that when I walk into the office, I'm like, okay, this is a disaster. We're going to clean this up. I can't work in this space. So they know I've got these organizational skills, and then I've got these business skills people are calling me about. And so when I launched my business on Halloween last year, I launched it purely as web design and social media management. And I was only marketing myself to visionaries, healers, psychics, and teachers. And what happened, and the reason for that is because I used to manage the metaphysical bookstore. We have a very large local New Age fair every year. And so I go to the New Age fair every year. I see friends and meet new people and consistent. I mean, we're talking like 130 booths. It's not small. Oh, wow. It's a nice size, gathering. And so consistently I'm going from booth to booth, and I'll go home and get the program out and look on these people's websites, and they're awful.
Right.
And I don't mean that in a judgment place. These people are very talented.
Right. It's just not their thing.
It's not their thing.
It's not their focus. They're just put it out there because they thought they had to, because it's a business.
And so they're focused on their healing or their tarot readings or whatever. And then they've got this business aspect. And so what happened, I took on some clients who were very much living their path and living their dream and putting their gifts out there. One of those clients, I don't want to say too much. One of those clients, I went to her home to work with her on her website and her social media. And honestly, I don't know how she found the door.
Oh.
And so I had worked with her for a few weeks, and she kept hitting these roadblocks in her business. And one day I looked at her and I said, she said, what's going on? Like, what do you think the problem is? And I said, you kind of have a little bit of a disaster. I said a little nicer than that. And I said, but I think if we can sort through your papers, and if we can, do some of this other clutter clearing work, you might find that life moves a little easier for you. And so then she became a dual client. I was doing her web design and social media management, newsletters, those kinds of things, as well as organizing for her. And then I came home one day and I said, this is silly. I can do both, and I love both. And I'm going to tell you, Cherrise, it was like once I made that decision and flipped that switch, like a door opened for me, and I had clients starting to come in because I wasn't struggling and fighting anymore with my own purpose.
Yeah, I hear you. Because there's so many times, not only with that, and trying to do what people say, to choose one thing and go with that and talk to those people. But also in being who we really are. Because if, you know, we all fall into the comparison thing sometimes, you know, and you start looking at what other people are doing, you're like, oh, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should be more polished. Maybe I should, you know, have perfect lighting for things. Maybe I should hire graphic designers to do all these things. Or maybe, you know, like all these things that you start looking at what other people are doing.
Right.
But is that you? I mean, is it really what's important to you?
Right.
Because to me, I have a very creative side anyway. My degree is in interior design.
Okay.
I don't do anything with that anymore. But I did. So it follows a whole creative path that I've had since I was a child. And when you get into like the organizing, doesn't feel as creative, you know, it feels very different. But then when I created my affirmation decks, I was like, I love doing this. I was like crack fiend. Like I couldn't get away from the computer, which was very bad because then I wasn't doing my energy resets.
Right.
And you know, wasn't practicing what I preach, but I was just like in go mode. And, so I have learned to go with it, go with what makes you happy. Like when I get that creative thing, nudge, it won't leave me alone.
Right.
So
I'm with you.
I have to do it somehow, right? Which is why now I've got the jewelry and the cards, because it just kept popping in my head over and over and over and over to do it and get that creative mojo going on, because it really does, in my opinion, create that balance in your life if you're incorporating what is drawing you near. And I totally agree with the clear spaces, even though I tend to have piles.
Right, and I think we all do, but there's a difference in having a working pile and having your entire home be a pile. And and I'm going to tell you, like, I feel like that's what happens typically with creatives and really a lot of very spiritual people who have these amazing gifts, and because they get so wrapped up in that creative process that they don't see their space, and then they wonder why they're running up against these, you know, brick walls and can't get to their events on time, or why their marketing isn't working or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it goes hand in hand.
It really does. It does. And you know, when I convinced my son to clean his room, he just turned 14. I'm like, doesn't this feel so much better? Like you can breathe, it feels clean, like the energy's flowing around here better, you sleep better. He really does.
Yes.
You know, it feels so much better. So it's not just some woo-woo thing. It really does feel better. And all the ideas start flowing and things start falling into place easier. So I can see how what you do is probably like magic for some people, right?
Yeah, I had an organizing client recently that I knew her sort of through business, and she needed her home office cleared, and she teaches creative writing classes from her home, and she couldn't find anything and was living out of bins in her office. And when we wrapped up the end of her session, and I'll only do 3 hours at a time for clutter clearing, she sat back and she took a breath and she said, I have not breathed in this room in a year. And, you know, that's really to me. And then there's that energetic component that comes along with that. And releasing those things that don't serve us. And I think that things like web design have, you know, there's an organizational component to that as well. I'm doing a redesign for a client right now who is a spiritual practitioner and has products and has a thriving business. And I just went into her back office to begin the redesign, and the organization of her website nearly put me over the edge for about a minute. I'm like, okay, take a breath. Whoever had designed that website. I mean, you know, so to me, that's how my brain works. I see that organizational component everywhere. And so I'm able to pull it together.
Yeah.
You know, and make it tie.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally, that's why I do outlines with my clients.
Yes.
Because it's an organizational component. It's very neat. I'm a very visual person. I like to see the connections, you know, and that's the clarity comes from that. The organization and the clarity. And you're like, oh, and people are always like, oh, this feels like so much easier now that I see it like this. I'm like,
yes.
It does. Yes, it does.
Yeah, and with your cards, I can completely see with your affirmation cards that they can work with get shit done, because there's almost an action component within them, right?
Yeah.
And so some people need that. Some people need that daily reminder. And I mean, I do all the time when I have something pop up from Louise Hay or, you know, from the Shift Network or whatever it is, like in my Facebook feed, and I go, oh yeah, I needed that today. I needed somebody to tell me whatever that message was. And so I assume it's just for me and not for anyone else.
Right. Well, often it is, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I choose a card. How I've been doing them lately is I just run up the chakras, and that way I don't keep repeating the same one by randomly choosing like I used to do. I was like, oh, I just picked this card yesterday.
So you didn't get the lesson the first time. You needed to get it again.
Right. I try to choose different ones, but I just go in order. I like to go from bottom to top. So that's why I'm doing this. Some people do this, but
no, I like to open it up that way too.
Yeah. And then my other ones based on the 5 Reiki principles.
Oh, nice.
Are the Just for Today deck. And that's, you can do them the same way, but you can also use them a little differently. But whenever I post one out there, almost always, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook, somebody will say, oh my gosh, I so needed to hear that today.
Yeah.
So I like to encourage people too, like when a thought pops in your head, and when I'm posting those, I actually do them that morning. And I go out in the patio and just start how I usually start them, with a little exercise. And then whatever comes to me regarding that card is usually what people connect with, whatever message thing I pull out of it, kind of. And that's where the connection is. So it's not like I do them ahead of time. I'm not that organized.
Right.
To get them all done. It's very in the moment. So that's why sometimes they're not done yet, like today. Stuff to do.
That's all right. Yeah, I think, and I think also that we live in this, and if you do Reiki and you're kind of in spiritual circles, this thought of the duality that we live in.
Yeah.
And I think that we're continuing to move closer and closer to more unity. You wouldn't know it maybe right now in this climate, but I really do think that people are awakening. And 20 years ago when I was doing this stuff, and I'm not old. I came to it younger than a lot of people do. And I think that people are tired of everything being split. Whether, no matter what your faith is or your spiritual tradition, I think that people are tired of living in this dual space where things cannot work together. And I have personally found, even living in the South, I'm from the South, that most people are open to whatever it is that you want to share, and people want to be connected in a different way, and especially women, because we need so much support all of the time. We really do. I mean, it really takes a village. We live near family. We're very blessed. I think being in Nashville, which is the hottest real estate market in the country, the hottest job market in the country, I know a lot of people who are here without family. They come here with no friends for a job, and they've lost that village support. And so I think really where we live right now, we need whatever support we can get more than ever.
I agree. And there's no way, and this is kind of a common theme that I've been running into in a lot of my interviews lately too. And that because there is the support out there, and women are like awesome supporters of other women,
right,
for the most part.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see things out there. I'm like, wow. First of all, it's people complaining about stuff that I never even saw, but I'm like, I don't know what's happening, because I feel that we are so much better. Everything is so much better when we support each other. And some people get stuck in a competitive thing, which is very masculine.
Yes.
And very old school, I think. Not really where we're at business-wise today. So in the entrepreneurial world, collaborations are so important because we support each other, and we're not doing the same thing. You know, people are like, oh my God, there's like 10 million other coaches or something out there. It's like, yeah, but they're attracting the people that like their personality or their approach to things, and what everybody brings to the table is something different.
Absolutely.
So when we get over that and we support each other and share each other's awesomeness, you know, it's only benefiting you, in my opinion, which is really why I do this series. Because to be honest, I like promoting other people's stuff. So that's how this series even began, was because I just got this idea to share women's stories and how they followed their passion and got to where they are now. And that shares their business and it shares their skills. And because I get joy out of doing that. But it comes back around, right? Because then you make those connections.
Absolutely.
There's so much support in the online world if you look for it.
There is. And I do get nervous that we spend, you know, so it's kind of this double-edged sword. I love being able to Skype or do Zoom or whatever and connect with people. I do try to encourage people to be out in the world as well, because I don't know, I don't want us to lose that. I don't want us to lose that connection. And so like I have a class that I'm teaching. I had it on Teachable. I pulled it down temporarily while I reformat and add content, but I'm actually teaching it in my home in 2 weeks.
Oh, great.
And so I'll be teaching it here. And then hopefully, crossing my fingers, by Friday, the content will be back up. It's for people to be able to purchase it online as well.
And is it about decluttering?
Actually, this class, which goes along probably a little more with my business offerings, it's called Step Out of Fear Into Your Story. And it came from a couple of things. It came, number one, from my own experience of being able to share, being afraid to share what I do, and then being able to share what I do, which was a huge journey for me. But it also came, I've sat on several boards, and it's so fascinating within the fundraising world. I had I sat on the board of my children's school, and I was doing fundraising and development as a volunteer, and raised nearly $1 million over like 6 years. And I'm passionate about Waldorf education. And so I would sit with these board members who are incredible business people and just wonderful people. And none of them, none of them could articulate why they were on that board or what Waldorf education meant to them. And so what I realized was, there's just a lot of people out in the world who just can't share their own story for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And then I would go out to these metaphysical fairs, and I would meet women and men who could kind of be okay in that space, but they're just, they have a lot of fear in their heart over who they are. Mm-hmm. And I have some personal stories, not about myself, but about other people I've met. And so I created this class, and I've taught it a couple of times of stepping into that place. Everyone has a great story. I don't know anyone that doesn't have some magnificent story about their life, and they don't recognize it, and they think someone else's story is better. It's the comparison thing you were talking about. Right, yeah. Someone else is better. Their story is better. I have nothing to offer. No one's going to pay me. All of those things, right? And so I developed this class around that, and really it's a very hands-on class where we walk through handouts and write down your strengths and your weaknesses and a little bit of resume building, not for the resume aspect, but so that people can see. And a resume goes way beyond where you've worked. Yeah. So that's what this class is.
And it's hard to see your own skills. Because I found that, you know, I worked in my corporate job for the past it was over 9 years
Okay.
in that role. And I'm like, my title was executive assistant to the president, but I did facilities management, gallery coordination, you know, like I did anything that people needed to do, they would come to me to get it done. I was like, I don't think, what skills do I have? I don't know. I know how to type a letter, you know, like, so often it takes somebody who knows you to reflect back to you what they think you can do, because we take advantage. I mean, we don't even think that what we do is anything special because we just do it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's so important. I'm sure you cover that, like in that aspect, like when somebody says, oh, I don't know, I just mailed letters. And you're like, okay, let's look at that a little bit deeper, you know, and there's a skill in everything.
Well, I had a lady that I worked with who was she worked part-time where I was at the private school. And then she also at home was the office manager for the League of Women Voters for the state of Tennessee, right? It's like a little part-time job. Mm-hmm. No. She managed the database for like every voter registration in Tennessee, essentially from home through the league, anyone that they signed up. But talking about mailing letters, she managed the postal service, like their metered mail for this organization. And I don't know if you've ever done metered mail. Yeah. Okay. Like to set up metered mail and take that on is a huge undertaking. And so it's those little things that are just, people do not realize how big they are. Mm-hmm. And what that can we can find language to translate that into something really spectacular.
Right. Something that sounds more exciting than mailing a letter.
Right. But it's a really big deal, mailing a letter, especially if you're doing it for an organization and you've got, 1,000 items going out every month or whatever. Yeah.
That was part, you mentioned that. I totally forgot about those beginning years at the college, and we mailed a lot of just say I got really good at the folding process, and I sort of used it like a meditation. Like I got in a little Zen zone of the folding and stuffing process.
Right. It's a really big deal. And I think that we, for a long time after I had been home with my kids and I went back to work, I had something on my resume like home executive and I literally listed everything I did as a mom. And I had a woman, this was in retail management. I had like the district manager who's lived all over and worked for everybody. And she said to me, that was really gutsy to put that on your resume. And she called me in for an interview, and she said, I wanted to meet you. That's awesome. That on your resume. Good for you. And I said, this is a really big deal. I manage a family. That is no small feat.
No, it's not. And from an outside, like before you have children, sometimes you're just like, it's not that big of a deal. Like you have kids and you like cart them around, whatever. How hard can that be? Yeah. And then you have them, you're like, oh my God. Like, and I think the harder part is in the beginning, obviously, when they're tiny and you've got the diaper bags and the strollers and the changes of clothes and like all the bits and pieces that come with it just to get out the door. Right. And then you have to figure out how you're going to do the groceries with all that stuff. Yeah. It's project management at its finest.
It is. I showed someone, and again, it's this whole thing. So I kind of joke about being the mom of the year. I win it some days and I lose it some days. And I recently showed someone my calendar, and it was a single woman. And she said, I bet your calendar is a little crazy. And I pulled up my Google Calendar on my phone. I showed it to her, and her jaw dropped open because I have a 14-year-old and I have a 10-year-old. And I have a husband that needs managing, quite frankly, on a regular basis. And those things, and I love those things. And I'm able to pull all of those things out with what I do for my clients. I love serving my clients. Like I love it when a client gets it. I had a client call me recently, and for months I'd been like pulling her along with Facebook, pulling her along. And then she got it one day. And she said, now I see how all the pieces fit together. And that was a win for me that day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When it clicks. And often I was thinking about that today, how many times we have to hear the same freaking thing
Yeah.
before we get it, before it really settles in and we're like, oh my God, like I've been hearing this thing for years and it just right now has settled in and I get it, you know,
Yes.
all the time, like in training, you know, things that just you felt resistance to or something. You're like, why do I have to do that? Or I don't get this thing, but you hear it over and over and over and over. Thankfully, the universe likes to make you hear it
That's right.
over and over and over again until you
get it.
And then you can move on. And then you're like, oh, good. Okay, I got this now.
It's really true. Okay, I have to ask you, the mandala behind you, is that yours?
Yeah.
Did you design that? Or
I did not design it, but this wonderful woman in South Africa does that. Rosalind, I can't remember her last name right now. It's based on numerology. So it's actually like my own imprint, my own, she combines numerology of your birthday and your name and all that in a geometric form.
I love it.
And she sends you this whole reading thing about it. So yeah, I had one made for my daughter too. Hers is very different. I like hers better.
No, I love it.
More detailed, but mine was simpler. But I do like simple. I like clean and simple things. So actually, yeah. So that's what that is. I can send you her stuff. She's very cool. Yeah. She can send you prints. She's got different ways of doing it. She even has a deck of cards out of all her mandalas. They're beautiful.
I love it.
So that was a total side note.
Sorry.
Fun for Rosalind.
That's fine. I kept seeing it behind your head and I had to ask about it.
Yeah, I like to put it there because I see it and because I know it's personal to me, that it brings a little extra vibration to the space.
It's like right at your crown chakra. You know, I mean, it's really behind, and I can see that that's where it sits, right?
Yeah, not intentionally, just because that was the space available between my floating books. But
I like it.
Yeah. So I can see how decluttering really does, even though we've talked about it sporadically, but it all weaves into your business, how you work, and even in the things like your website and everything. Like if things are just chaotic, the energy doesn't flow and you get stuck.
Right.
Stuck in your flow and your creativity. And that's no good. So I totally see how what you do, even though they seem like two different things, really do come together.
Yeah, and actually one of my current ongoing clients that I just developed a website for, it's so funny. She's a real estate agent. So initially I was marketing only to sort of people in the spiritual community, but I've got people coming out of the woodwork trying to hire me from a lot of different walks of life. And so I had actually sent to all the real estate agents I know that I personally know in Middle Tennessee, I sent them all an email and said, hey, I'm doing space clearing and decluttering and organizing. And if you have any clients that you're trying to sell their home and you're stalling, please refer them to me. And so within, 15 minutes, I get an email from a realtor who's an old friend of mine. I nannied for her when I was in college years ago. And she said, I had no idea you did websites. Can you meet me Tuesday? And I said, sure. And I talk about this in the book about that relationship building. That's my part in the book that we wrote. And so she emailed me. And so now, so I've got a website client and social media client that actually came out of my pushing my organizing services. So it all really, it all works together and it works for me. It works for me. And I really, that's something that I was so excited about that book because I was able to talk about those interpersonal relationships. And I'm very big on that. I'm very big on networking, and I hate networking. I'm not going to lie. Like I'm like you. I'm that person that when we go to an event, I'm like, oh, do I have to engage with anybody? Can't I just find that one person I know and stand in the corner and talk?
Yeah.
And you can't, no, you really can't. but you can find other ways. And so like I emailed all of these realtors that I knew. I emailed like 10 realtors and said, hey, this is, and I got, and what is it? You get 1 yes to 10 no's or whatever that ratio is. In sales. And so, I sent it out to this broad spectrum using relationships I've built in my community, and I got a really great client out of it. So I'm very big on everyone continuing to work those relationships. I know it's hard. There's a lot of people moving around the country right now, but that is what this is good for. We've got Skype and we've got Zoom and we've got all kinds of ways, FaceTime and Google Hangouts and all kinds of ways to reach people. So whatever your modality is, you're not limited any longer to sitting in your office.
Right.
We have that ability. Work your relationships and then utilize the tools you have.
That's so important. So important. And I did that from one of my masterminds. There's a group of 4 of us that worked together, and we still do, even though the mastermind is done. And so one of my friends from there was in Orlando a couple weeks ago. So I took the drive over there because she lives out in Arizona. So I took the drive over there to meet her and hang out with her for the afternoon. It was awesome. But it was just like we've known each other like for years because we've been hanging out for so long in the virtual space, but it was so great to be in person. But it's still, my point is that it still builds relationships, even if it's in this type of format.
Yes, I do agree with that. And I think this is an amazing tool to have. Like I've gotten to talk to you and to Misty face to face. And then I feel like there's someone else recently that I've done this with and I can't remember. And then Kelly, so there are all of these, and even just on the book collaborative, all of us sitting together in that space and talking was so fun. I love that. But I think that even when people move, like I was saying, reach out to those contacts and I just think it's really important, and we forget. And again, we kind of get in that fear of reaching out and putting yourself out there in that rejection. And I sometimes just have to get over it.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, we do. I mean, because what really is going to happen? What are the consequences? There really aren't any negative consequences to it.
Yeah, someone doesn't want what you have to offer, and that's okay. Everyone's not going to want what you have.
But they may know somebody who does.
They may know someone who does. Absolutely.
So it's never a lost effort, because when you reach out to them, they could think, oh, well, this totally isn't for me, but I just was talking to somebody who this is perfect for, and then they pass your name along.
Yeah.
Never wasted.
Absolutely.
So is there a book that you suggest to people when they ask you about where to begin with decluttering?
So an acquaintance of mine actually just wrote a really great book. And if they go to my website, danacroy.com, and sign up for my newsletter, they're actually going to get emailed to them an ebook, a small ebook that I wrote called Sacred Space Clearing Explained.
Cool.
And so it tells them how to do their own space clearing. And at the end, I have some book resources. There's a really great book called Home is a Happy Place by Christy Farr, and she's listed in that resource. That book, it may be one of the best books. She released it in January. It's one of the best ones I've ever read. It is not the mechanics of decluttering, and it's not an organizing book. Mm-hmm. It's a very honest, well-written book about why you're holding on to your stuff and why you need to let it go. Mm. And I read it, and I emailed her and I said, Christy, this is what's missing. I have bookshelves of organizing books and Feng Shui books. And rarely do they, it's all about like, how do you organize your stuff? How, getting the right bins and the right tools. Right. And there are not enough books out there that delve into this emotional reason that we can't let things go. Mm-hmm. And she does that. And I really think if you're serious about decluttering, you have to kind of start with the heart of why. And that's what I do with my clients. I have a client, I'll go in and spend 3 hours. So I have clients that we go through every piece of paper.
Oh, wow.
Why are you keeping, okay, and how is this going to serve you? And because there's that emotional aspect. And what we realize, or what I realize, is when we release the things we don't need, we have room for the things we do. I recently acquired my mother's sewing basket.
I saw a picture of that on Facebook. Yeah.
It was very, it was really important. And I have room to have her sewing basket in my home. Mm. And I use it. It's next to a wingback chair. I quilt. I can sit there and go through her sewing basket and pull out the things that I need to sew. And it's not sitting in clutter, being neglected and discarded. And that's what happens when we have too many things and we're holding on to the things that we don't need, is that nothing becomes important because everything's just a disaster.
Right. This thought crossed through my mind this morning. I'm afraid I might have some hoarding tendencies. And I mean, my house isn't crazy cluttered. To my mother it is, but that's just kind of piles of stuff. But my mother's a super neat freak.
Okay. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But so there's this Febreze bottle that's sitting on my dryer that's empty.
Right.
And I keep it because what if I need just a spray bottle for something?
Right.
And then I don't have one that works. And that one is there. I'm like, oh, Cherrise, you're one of those people on that TV show. Just get rid of it. It's garbage. But then, you know how often it happens that as soon as I get rid of something, I need that damn thing?
I know.
But it happens a lot. It happened recently too. I was like, I just freaking threw that thing out and now I could use it.
But would you grab it if there were a fire?
No.
Do you want to pack it if you move?
Oh.
Okay. Well, ask yourself those questions.
I might have to throw out that Febreze bottle.
If there's something that you're really unsure about, think, would I pack this in a box if we were moving? So I think that there are just as lens, and there are things, everyone, I hold on to something. I'm trying to look around right now. I don't know, not in this room. The room that I'm in right now stays really clean. But we certainly have those things in our home. And everyone does. Mm-hmm. And it's really about when it becomes unhealthy or when it becomes a block to the rest of your life, that it's a problem. Right. So if the Febreze bottle, if that's your line.
I don't even, that thing has been there for like forever. I don't even know how long that thing has been there. And I keep looking at it and I keep moving it and stuff. And I'm like, why do I even still have it? And then that the little voice in my head is like, because you might need a spray bottle.
And I'm going to tell you about those spray bottles like Febreze. You'll never get that scent out.
Yeah, probably not. It would never come out that I wouldn't be able to use.
And so if you want to use it for something else, it'll be really hard. I've learned that lesson.
Okay. So more reason to just get rid of the stupid thing.
Yeah. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for being on here. And I will have, the link to contact Dana and for her free gift, because you can't use some insight into decluttering, space clearing, I guess.
Yeah.
It looks like I probably could. A little insight into that. And so all that information will be on my website, CherriseBoucher.com. Under the Inspire View Series tab, you'll see her little face in the little scrolly thing, and there'll be a quick link to go directly to her interview. Also, it's on my YouTube channel, so everybody can find it there, easy peasy. Thank you again so much for being here. I've learned a lot today, and I love hearing your story of how you got to where you are. And I feel like no experiences that we've accumulated are ever wasted. Like there's always bits of every little hat that we've worn and different roles that we've played in our lives that all come into play at some point. They're all blended in there. So
thank you.
Be multi-passionate. It'll all work.
Thank you, Cherrise.
Thank you.